Good day to all. Good morning to you people in Trinidad and wherever you are in the Caribbean or North America or on the African continent for that matter, like I am. And it is indeed a good day the Lord has made, and to come and join you all again today and to just be able to have some more conversation with you. And so we talked about emotions last week and trying to understand emotional wounds and how it impacts us, and how, the way we struggle through life trying to manage these emotions. And the truth is, none of us will ever be perfectly healed from these wounds. That's the process of becoming more like Christ as we go through this journey from Genesis chapter 3 to Revelation 22 in God's healing and redemption, till we get to the end and we be completely healed again as God originally created us. But until then, the challenge for you and I is to be aware of the things about us that gets in our way of healthy relationships, and work on those things. Some are easily worked on by just having conversation with people, praying about it, reading a book, things like that, and you figure it out. And then you have to see a therapist sometimes, a professional who have to help you. So I have walked the gamut. I have worked with therapists. I have read books. I have gone to seminars. I have done a lot of different things in helping me to get to where I'm at. But I'm still working on it. And as life changes, life season changes, then emotional issues changes, and you have to constantly be aware that you have to change along with do the work to change along with as life goes along in a different season that you're in. So there's a lot of things that you need to work on, but the biggest thing is, as long as you work on being aware, you are able to constantly work in those places in your life that needs work and healing and help. Okay. All right. So today we are going to talk about intimacy in marriage, and more specifically, sexual intimacy, understanding sexual intimacy. So that's where we want to focus our conversation today. And so we're going a little further now. Last week we described just the fundamentals of the struggles we have with our emotions, but this one now is we want to go into talking about how we deal with the emotions and the intimacy that develops in the marriage, and how we can work with the challenges we face, how we can work to make things better, how we can work to deal with the things that gets in the way. Okay, so that's where we're going today. And again, feel free to ask your questions and interrupt. Okay, all right. So you know my three things that I just want to remind you. A lot of the damage is done in the middle, how we were nurtured and raised. But at the bottom there, we ultimately have a choice. We have a choice. And sometimes we need people to help us make the choice because we are so wounded, we can't do it ourselves. Or sometimes we need education and different things to see that we have a choice. But at the end of the day, we have a choice, and we choose how we want to continue to allow how we were raised and the things we come into this world with to shape us. And we make that choice consciously or unconsciously. We are making the choice. Okay. All right. First, let me give you a little definition of intimacy. It's the closeness between two people in a personal relationship that usually denotes mutual openness, sharing, vulnerability, trust, compassion, and respect for each other. Now, you will notice as I go through this presentation, all of those may not be um, in a relationship, but there will be intimacy, as you would see. But this here is talking to you at a level of intimacy where we going in terms of understanding in the context of marriage. But it is closeness between two people in a personal relationship, okay? And we can talk about mutual openness, the sharing, the vulnerability, the trust, the compassion, and the respect for each other. That is just a basic definition of when you talk about being intimate, okay? So I don't want you to just draw intimacy as sexual. I want you to see it as two people in a relationship. develop that relationship, you'll notice the intimacy also grows. Okay. So in terms of talking and understanding marriage, marriage is a crucible for intimacy, and a crucible it serves is a severe test or trial or extremely challenging experience. So as you understand crucible, I want you to understand that when it comes to intimacy, it's not something that just happens in a marriage. It really takes some doing for it to experience it at the level at which um, want to describe it for you in our conversation today. But it really is the place where it becomes an extremely challenging experience for a lot of people, and we will see why that is a little later as we talk about it. Okay, it is a referring to the difficulty of giving oneself fully to your spouse. So this is why we say this is a crucible. And when I come more to the end of this presentation, you'll see what I mean by giving oneself fully to your spouse. That is often difficult for most people, but there are reasons for that. And we can go back to last week's presentation and see we carry some wounds and some things from the past that makes it that difficult for us. So Brene Brown helps us to kind of understand when she says there can be no intimacy, emotional intimacy, spiritual intimacy, physical intimacy without vulnerability. And this is, if you're familiar with Brene Brown's work, she's the one who did a lot of research and became sort of known as the as the person who understands shame and vulnerability. She has written a lot of different books trying to deal with that issue in our human existence, how shame impacts us and how shame keeps us from being vulnerable. So one of the reasons she said there is such an intimacy deficit today is because we don't know how to be vulnerable. Okay, vulnerability is a scary thing for most of us, and understand this. It's about being honest with how you feel, about your fears, about what you need. It is the glue that holds intimate relationships together. Okay. So it's vulnerable to say exactly what you're concerned about, or take the risk. You're not be vulnerable even to speak to someone about something that you're concerned about. And while they may think it's okay, you're seeing it in a different way, you are able to share that. Okay. So only when you're vulnerable, you can begin to talk about intimacy. A lot of us, we avoid vulnerability because we are afraid of how the relationship might impact people. People might be impacted, how they might take what we say, or they might laugh at us, or they're going to take us seriously. A lot of us, if we were as kids, made fun of or laughed at when we were trying to say things, then we are afraid to be vulnerable as adults because we carry those wounds of the fear of what people say about us, or how they would see us, or how they would laugh at us, or how they might yell at us. So we are afraid to be vulnerable. We're afraid to put ourselves out there because of how we perceive people may react towards us. So once we struggle with the vulnerability, the intimacy will be also a struggle. Next week we're going to talk about how we fight in a healthy way. I'll talk about how we create a safe space, even how to fight to grow and not to fight to win. But that safe space is so huge, and having people. And here's what end up happening when we can't create it in the marriage. We created people outside of the marriage, and then we take the marriage issues outside of the marriage, and then the marriage becomes vulnerable and things become complicated. And so you have distance in the marriage while closeness is growing with people outside of the marriage. And that is what you want to avoid. Your marriage, you've probably all heard me say this before. Your marriage, once you get married, that becomes the most important human relationship you now have on earth. You have left father and mother for the two of you to become one. So whenever you find yourself not being able to deal with the marital issues in the marriage and you start taking it outside, you're already compromising the marriage. You need to find the help to be able to create the safe space in the marriage to work with the issues in the marriage. When you have to speak truth to people, you have to ask yourself, is it truth? Is it necessary? Is it the right time? Is it the right place? Is it kind? Okay. We have to ask ourselves this question to have these tough conversations, and you have to make emotional deposits in people in relationships in order to make withdrawals. When you have to have a tough conversation, that's a withdrawal. But you have to have some investment in the people so that they know you care. So when you have these tough conversations, they hear you, knowing out of a voice of love and concern and not out of judgment. And so that is very important. No matter how safe we try to make it, some people are so wounded they take everything personal. You know, and then that's when you have to recognize, we need help here beyond us being able to manage this, because you have done your best and you still aren't able to get through in creating a safe space. Then you have to say, maybe we need to get some help in learning, and so I could learn how to better relate to you or make you safe or whatever. But if the two of you can't manage the situation in a healthy way, I usually say, look for help. But look for help with people who are along the lines of your values and your beliefs so that they will guide you in the right direction rather than they mislead you because their beliefs, their values are different from your own. Okay? So what I wanted to do now is to talk to you about the different types of intimacy. So I wanted to show you intimacy is not something that happens just in a marriage. Intimacy happens in relationships, but being able to see the different types of intimacy and how they work and to be aware of them. Okay. So first there's experiential intimacy. You develop that with the people you work with, the people you spend a lot of time with, people you do things with together. You develop intimacy. I mean, it's just natural. It's a human thing. You spend time with people and you feel a connection, and you can talk with them and you can laugh with them and you can give them a hug and you can do a lot of things around them. Okay, you don't just walk and hug a stranger, someone you don't even know, right? And some of us don't even let people hug us, even who know us, right? So, but by spending time with people, so in the workplace, that's why we see a lot of these instances where we have um, secretaries getting sexually involved with the boss or the pastor with a church member or whatever. Is because they spend time together, they develop intimacy, they feel a strong connection, but for one, they misread what that means. You read it all the time with politicians and stars, and it happens all the time. People misunderstand intimacy that clicks, that we get along well, we work together. And because it feels good, they read it as sexual and then become involved sexually. And then after they realize this was a bad idea or this didn't work, or they might leave their spouse, their marriage might end, but then the two of them still doesn't stay together after a while because it really was driven more out of the time they spent together and the intimacy. So what I'm saying to you is be aware you are going to develop intimate relationship with people that you spend time with. But the important thing is the boundaries which we did when we did the 5 days presentation, understanding the boundaries for your marriage and the boundaries for your relationship. And you don't misunderstand a good connection with someone to mean that it becomes something that becomes sexual or I'm in love or whatever, because that is not really what's happening. You are merely bonding well because you're spending time together. That is perfectly natural. That is perfectly healthy. But you have to know the boundaries of what it means. Okay? So experiential intimacy, and I'm sure we've all been there, done that, and some of us are in that right now because it's true for us in the relationships we're in around us, but understand them for what they need. Okay. So the other one is spiritual intimacy. Spiritual intimacy is the process of opening your heart, or aspect of yourself to each other as you open your hearts to the Lord. It is the process of profoundly connecting the core of your being to each other. without giving up your own self. So again, so this is a type of intimacy where, because we spend time, especially in the church context, we spend time together, we pray together, we share deeply where we are. I got three guys that I meet with weekly once we are not they're not traveling or whatever, and they're in the US, different parts of the US. I'm here in South Africa. But man, we have a deeply intimate relationship because we spend time sharing where we are, our victories, our struggles, our frustrations, our joys, and when we meet, I mean, we hug each other and we're so happy to see each other. And, I'm going to be uh, in the US week after next, the 25th, I'll land in the US. And I know by the 26th, 27th, I'm going to go and meet one of them who lives right where I'll be. I'm going to see Nate. We're going to have coffee. We're going to hug. We're going to talk because we're intimate. We're close because we spend time sharing deeply our hearts and where we are, but we still maintain who we are. I haven't become like those guys. Those guys have not become like me. We help each other to become uniquely who we are. So we're not trying to make each other become the same. We're simply trying to be there for each other. This happens all the time. And again, we have trouble in the church with this because when that intimacy grow with the profound sharing, especially with the pastor and with the church members and with the choir leaders and the choir members and all the people, it's misunderstood. And we get ourselves in trouble because we give in to what the intimacy felt like in terms of the connection of the deep sharing. And this is even deeper than the work experience, the experiential one, because this one is more you're really sharing your heart and soul of where you are and where things are, and you have this profound connection, to each other, and recognizing that it's okay to feel that it's okay that that's a healthy thing as well, but knowing the boundaries of where that begins and how that, and I mean knowing where that ends and how to be able to manage that in a healthy way. Okay, so we get intimate when we work together with people, we get intimate when we share our hearts with people from a spiritual perspective in growth and helping each other and being vulnerable around each other with where we are and inviting people in our lives to hold us accountable. That's vulnerability. To say to someone, I know I have this tendency to judge or to gossip or to cut in line or want to be first. If you ever see me doing that, could you just tap me on the shoulder or clear your throat or have a word that reminds me um, that I'm working on this part of my life that, you know, invite people. It takes vulnerability to invite people to correct you, to hold you accountable as well, especially in the spiritual space. They invite people to help you to grow and mature and say, I want you to look out for me. Help me. This is the area I struggle with. And when you see me or you hear me, would you just remind me or help me along the way? Okay. But it is an intimate relationship as well. So let's go to the next one, which is intellectual intimacy. When it comes to intellectual intimacy, people feel safe sharing their ideas and their opinions, even when they don't see eye to eye in the matter. Okay. So you could be vulnerable to challenge and to push back and to have these healthy conversations. Okay. Think of being around someone who makes you feel it's okay to share whatever that is on your mind. And rather than putting you down, they create a space, for you to explore more deeply whatever you're talking about. That's where the intimacy grows. So they're not afraid to allow you be opposite, okay? But can you have these conversations? Can you be okay and you don't have to be afraid and you could spend time having these long conversation and be able to feel. So whenever you think of this person, you want to be around them, you like talking with them, you can sit and talk with them about whatever. And there is this natural connection. It's an intimacy again that's taking place here where you are being vulnerable with your thoughts from a particular perspective, and this person can hear you out. They're on the opposite side of you, but they can hear you out. You can hear them out, and you can have these healthy conversations. Okay. Now I tell people, personally, I am big on social issues. I'm always following what's going on in society, and I'm big, I'm deeply into politics, and I follow things. But I have very few conversations with people about politics because they don't have the ability to be vulnerable to speak their views and let it be heard, and then allow me to speak and we can have a healthy conversation. No, no, no. They see it their way. They want to shut me down, or they're just talking from a talking point. I'm not interested. If you want to have a healthy conversation, I said to a friend of mine, I said, in order for us to remain friend, let's not talk politics. And we don't, because the ability to have that conversation is not there. Okay. So intellectual intimacy, when you find people who allow you to do that, you feel safe and vulnerable and you enjoy their presence. I want to say to you though, there are people who are what we call um, sapiosexual. It's a word, and I'll tell you what it means. Sapiosexual are physically and emotionally turned on by intellectual conversation. There are people who will be turned on sexually by having just a deep conversation. And that's those who could recognize that about themselves. They could own the space and realize, I know that's a vulnerable place for me. So I am very careful where I go with that. But that's an actual thing. And I actually know people who that's a struggle for them. Okay?
Karen, we have a
Yes.
question on the chat. Can intellectual intimacy be learned?
Yes. And it calls for vulnerability. That's a good question. Yes, it can be. And it can be learned. You learn to be vulnerable with putting yourself out there and not being afraid of people think of your thoughts, of your positions, so you develop the self-confidence in what you believe and be able to put it out there, learning to put that out there little at a time, and develop the ability to slowly become intellectually intimate. Yeah, it can be learned. I have learned it because, when I grew up, I was always shut down. So I was afraid to speak up. As a matter of fact, when I was in graduate school, seminary in Kansas City, one of my New Testament professors, that Dr. Alex Deasley, I sat in his class, and this guy is brilliant, and the people around me, they're brilliant, and they're asking all kind of questions. And I went to him one day and I said, Dr. Deasley, I enjoy your class. And I said, I have questions, but I am so afraid to ask because, what people in the class might think. And this was a turning point for me. He says, Errol, you have to be able to ask your questions, or else you'll never get the answers. And that was the day when I started becoming vulnerable with my thoughts, where I can put it out there and not be afraid of what people thought about it, you know. And they would articulate this so clearly. Me in my dyslexic state, trying to say what I want to say, and the class of intellectuals intimidates me. But my professor just said that to me that day. And I began to develop my intellectual intimacy that I could do what I do now. I could have a conversation about what I talk about, and hold that conversation, not be afraid to talk about it or feel intimidated. So yes, it can be learned. I am a living testimony. Other type of intimacy, and this is the one to talk about, is the emotional intimacy. Now, emotional intimacy involves candid, authentic sharing of thoughts and feelings. It involves being able to tell each other your deepest fears, dreams, disappointment, and most complicated emotions, as well as feeling seen and understood when you do. Okay. You ever heard someone say, you know, I just feel so comfortable talking to you? Or, it's so easy to talk to you. Um, this level of intimacy here, this is dangerous ground, like all the others are, if we're not aware and not paying attention to our boundaries and what we're doing. But you can have this kind of intimacy and be able to you can be unfaithful in your marriage by having an emotional relationship with someone else. Not you having no sex with them, you're not involved with them, you're not in the home, everything else, but you have this unhealthy emotional intimacy with them. And so you always, you talk to them on the phone for hours, but you're not having any conversation with your spouse, or you spending time with them, or you always, and there is this um, intimacy that join you together because you can talk about any and everything. And but this stuff and this screen here is what you to be able to talk about with your spouse. This level of intimacy ought to be your vulnerability, your highest level of vulnerability is where you have to be able to do that. We have this create problems with when someone like still deeply connected to the ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, after they got married and but it's still um needing to talk to this person or spend time with them or spending a long time with them, there's that emotional intimacy that keeps this relationship going that needs to end because you have another relationship that is supposed to replace this one. Okay. And I've talked to a lot of couples where that's the problem. The emotional intimacy to the ex boyfriend or girlfriend or the first boyfriend or girlfriend is creating the problem. And one partner is rationalizing, I don't see what's the big deal. But you have to recognize it's an intimacy issue that one feels threatened by the other. And there needs to be this conversation because you need to repeat this almost verbatim with me now, because this is not the most important human relationship you have on earth. So you need to work with building the intimacy, the emotional intimacy. Here, let me just emphasize this word. Candid. Can you be candid in your marriage? Can you authentically share your thoughts and your feelings without being afraid that your spouse might get upset, or they're going to tell you you're stupid, or going to laugh at you, whatever? Okay. Can you tell about your deepest fears, your dreams, your disappointments? Can you talk about your most complicated emotions? I feel confused. I feel angry. I feel disappointed. I feel betrayed. I feel whatever, you know. And with saying all of those things, still feel you're being seen and understood when you say that. That's a big task. Okay. And not many of us do this well, but it's essential. It is essential. This is foundational here to good sexual intimacy, as we'll talk about it here shortly. But emotional intimacy, we develop unhealthy in no, let me rephrase this. We develop emotional intimacy with people and we allow it to impact us in unhealthy ways in our marriages because we don't know how to set the boundaries as to how far that relationship should impact our marriage. Some boundaries mean you need to run. And you can't do this unless we come back to what I've been saying fundamentally. You have to view your marriage as the most important human relationship you have. That's with your spouse. That's when you're going to cut off those relationships. You're going to set those boundaries. You're going to say, I don't want to go there. It feels good, and it's easy to talk to my ex because because you were with your ex more years than you with your spouse now. But yeah, but you got to build this thing. You can't build this thing when you are still being distracted by a relationship that is not going to be what it was trying to be in the first place. And this is what you have now. So you have to make a choice. I want to learn and develop and grow this relationship because this relationship is not going to happen anymore. We're past that. You have to, at times, just cut and move on. And a lot of couples I've talked to, that has been the problem. And there's also and let me just say this, the emotional intimacy with parents and with friends that we don't want to cut off. And we treat our spouses less than, or we get angry at them when they're feeling you can't spend time with. I was working with a couple, and this is what happened every day. This guy would be coming from work, and he would stop by his mother on the way home. And he will eat by his mother. And then when he comes home, and his wife makes dinner, he is not hungry or he just eats a little. Okay? That is a problem. But it's mom cooking, it's that. Well, you know what? You have to learn to eat your wife's cooking, or if your wife can't cook, teach your wife how to cook so you all learn and cook your own food together. But the point I'm trying to make is those intimacy you carry with those relationships, you need to draw the line and say, I need to do this for my marriage. Okay? All right. Now, I said all this to you to get you to this. Okay, this is what I want us to focus on. Uh, but we need to understand the different types of intimacy, and it could be healthy or unhealthy. And then the sexual intimacy that occurs when a man and a woman engage in consensual sensual or sexual activity. Okay, this is what we're getting at in building to come to here. Okay, it's the kind of intimacy that reserved for you and your spouse. It doesn't mean that you would not feel it towards someone or other than your spouse. But again, if you are in an emotionally healthy place, you will recognize the feeling and know that this kind of intimacy is reserved only for your spouse. So here's what I want to say. It doesn't mean because you're married, it doesn't mean you're not going to have sexual attraction for people outside of your marriage. That is normal. You're human. The thing is, again, go to the fruits of the Spirit in Galatians. The last one Paul says is self-control. Okay? Love, peace, joy, patience, kindness. And the last one is self-control. And I just usually say to people, none of the above would happen if you don't have that last one. That's the foundation. You must have self-control. So you're going to have emotional feelings. You can't control what you feel because certain triggers, certain things happen to you. Okay? If you were brought up in a sexually abusive situation and sex is what drives you, and then you feel sexual attraction for people, um, you're gonna feel it. But you have to recognize that while I feel that, I now know that my life is built on the covenant of a marriage that I have consented to before God and my spouse and the witnesses, and therefore I know what I'm feeling, but I need to be able to set the boundaries and draw the line and get the help so I could stay focused in my marriage. Now, in some cases, some couple could talk about it openly and help each other. And in some cases, if you mention that to a spouse, it might be the end of the marriage. Okay. So you have to work together. Okay. If your spouse is insecure and you're struggling with that, then you can't bring that up because that's going to create problems. Your spouse would think, what's wrong with him or her, but it's a struggle that you have to deal with, as we talked about last week. Some of the wounds you're carrying, that's triggered by that, and getting the help to know this is, you will experience sexual attraction outside of your marriage, but it doesn't mean that you pursue it. Sometimes you feel to kill somebody. Do you kill them? No, you don't, because it's not the right thing to do. Okay? This physical intimacy is so special. So we're getting a little deeper here now. So special and profound. Now, these are words that doesn't go with sexual intimacy in this day and age, because sex is the thing you do when you want, and and now the popular thing now is all of this trading your wife and all of this kind of thing. But this intimacy, this physical intimacy, is so special and profound because it lays bare our bodies in their beauty and imperfection for the pleasure of our spouse. Such a private moment, such a momentous act of total self-giving and trust that we don't share with anyone else. Okay, you need to let that kind of sink in, because this is not how we think about sex in the world today. It has been, we have followed social media and all of the ways the world puts it out to you, that it's almost like anything else. It's casual. It doesn't carry the value, that the Bible wants us to see when it talks about sex and your body and what sex means. This is what this is saying to you here. It's a profound, because you are being so vulnerable that you're allowing your spouse to have full access to you and vice versa. It's a total self-giving. It's the most vulnerable place you could be. Because in engaging in the experience of physical intimacy and sex, that gets you to the most vulnerable, helpless place you could ever be. And that is scary for some people. That is welcome for some people. But that is the extent to which how God designed it to be a total, profound giving of ourselves uh, to each other. Okay? All right. So it's understanding then emotional intimacy doesn't automatically occur with sexual intimacy. And that's what we see in today's world. Okay. As people who are sexually involved may not choose to share their innermost thoughts and feelings. So it's what a prostitute does, right? Have sex, but there is no intimacy because all it does is about an experience to for money and all these escort and all these people pay this high money and all, because it is merely an activity for a purpose, not for what it was meant for, but for the benefits of the finance. So there is the reality of sexual, physical sexual activity that doesn't carry any sexual intimacy. Okay, it doesn't automatically occur. Back to what I was saying earlier, it's on building with the vulnerability and the trust and the openness and being able to share and feel valued and heard and loved. That's how you get to the sexual intimacy. But you could be sexually involved without any intimacy at all, as we see so often with people and relationships go sideways. But more importantly, I think prostitution is the best example of sex without any intimacy. So all types of intimacy are a form of emotional bonding, but they occur at varying degrees. So go back from the beginning, whether it's working together, whether it's spiritually, whether it's just spending time doing things, whether it's intellectually, it's all form of intimacy. Okay, varying degree. So our working together intimacy is not the same as a sexual intimacy. Okay, but it's intimacy. What leads to the sexual intimacy is a lot more than what you engage in intellectual intimacy. So it's recognizing that when we have relationship, we have intimacy, but at varying degrees of it, and to be aware of it, to feel good in the presence of your friend, you know, and enjoy their presence and the conversation and everything else, and knowing, but that's who they are, my friend. I feel the connection, I feel the closeness, but that's not my spouse. That's my friend. So I hope you're tracking with me that all of your relationship has a level of intimacy. Okay? But you have to be aware of what the level is and what it means, but to be aware what the intimacy, and you can't be more intimate. Let me just say this. You can't be more intimate with your friend or your coworker than you are with your spouse. You should tell yourself, I have a problem and I need to figure out what it is so I could work on it. All
So we
right.
have a
Thank
question
you.
in the chat.
Okay.
Is it fair to expect all of these forms of intimacy in my spouse, or should I embrace each one from different people in my life instead?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There will be different people because you don't work with your spouse. So you'll have a different intimacy with the people you spend time working with. You might have people who you're part of a discipleship group or prayer group. You're gonna have intimacy. So no, your spouse can't give you all of that because you're gonna bond in people in different ways to be able to be fully human. What you have to be aware of is the level of intimacy each relationship offers. You'll be intimate with your brother and your sister, with your mother and your father. You'll have the intimacy. Your spouse can't give you that, but you have to know where the boundaries are. You have to know what they mean in terms of seeing them in a healthy space, so that you can be able to. I find it easier to talk to my mother than my wife. Okay, that's true. So you want to go there, but you realize again, this is my most important human relationship. So I need to figure out, how do I develop the intimacy to talk to my wife more easier than I talk to my mom. And that's where you have to do the work. You recognize this is work in the relationship I need to do here. But yeah, you can't depend on your spouse to give you all of those places. you're going to have them, but it's to recognize where they fit and how they best serves you and how they best serve your marriage. Yeah, we all have different intimate relationship with different people because that's normal, but you need to know what they mean. So moving on, let me talk to you about some things that keeps us from being. We struggle with sexual intimacy. Some things that really gets in the way, and we need to recognize them and see what they are. One is temptation. God gave us. So let me just say this to you. God gave us the ability to feel sexual, to have sexual urges, to want to have sex, to enjoy sex, for sex to be pleasurable, the highest form of relationship. That is God given. Nobody made that up. God built us for that. Okay. So, uh, because God gave us that drive, and that drive is meant to be expressed and enjoyed in a certain space. But because of the fallen creatures that we are, we have to deal, with the problem of temptation. You know, Adam sees Eve and he's naked, she's naked, and suddenly there's embarrassment, there's shame because sex began to mean something different now because of the fall. So there's always temptation and the desire for wanting more, or whether it's for your pursue physical gratification for your own sake, or you have been influenced by certain things, so now you're tempted to want that as opposed to being given fully to your spouse. So temptation is one of the things that gets in the way of our sexual intimacy because we have been influenced in growing up in unhealthy ways about sex, and now our spouse is not that, can't provide that. So we see it in different places and we're tempted towards it. That'll get in the way of sexual intimacy. Okay. Deception. Um, Again, from the early age, we were told sex was bad and you don't touch, you don't this. We try so hard. I can't figure out how we came up with this, but we get down on teenagers and young people just when they begin to feel sexual urges and stuff, and we try to protect them and you'll get pregnant or whatever, and we talk all about the sex thing. I think someone mentioned this last week on the conversation. And we focus all about, the sexual behavior of the young people. That seems to be the thing we are always driven by. But as soon as they get married, the sex conversation is over. Okay? No, someone is, I was at another conference, I was doing something and this came up and it says, yeah, they're focused on young people. All we're talking about is a sexual drive and protect yourself and guys can be with girls and all of that. But as soon as they get married, we become silent. Okay? So we're not teaching them anything about sex after they get married. And that's when the struggle is real because now they're in a relationship that they're not going to go anyplace else. This is it, but it's struggling. But all of the bad things you were taught about sex, it's dirty and you don't touch your private part and all of this kind of things and all of the stories you were told in order to keep you away from being sexual. The deception you were taught about sex now plays into your adult life in your own sexual experience that keeps you from being sexually intimate because you're carrying those voices and those things in your head still. Okay? Another thing that gets in the way of sexual intimacy is sexual exploitation. If you were abused sexually, not abused to the point of being forced into sexual activity when you were young and when you were supposed to be nurtured and protected, you were exploited by the people around you, whether it's a neighbor, a brother, a sister, a parent, a friend, a stranger, a teacher, somebody made you do things, touch them or had sex with you when you were still young and all that kind of stuff. Now you're exploited and now you become an adult and you're married and you're in a marriage. But the pain of the exploitation, the fear of the exploitation is what now drives your sexual responses. And it's a struggle because you don't even know how to manage that. It is all very real for you. So all of those things gets in the way. And then a sexual dysfunction for one reason or the other. You could be struggling, with sexual dysfunction, and you need to deal with that. And if you don't deal with it, then it creates more problems and it creates struggles in the marriage and difficulty for one reason or the other. And it will definitely impact the sexual intimacy in the marriage. Okay, what creates the intimacy is the vulnerability. You know, is it safe for you to say, you know, to your spouse, sex is great, but you need to have a shower, or I like the smell of this perfume on you or this cologne on you, it turns me on, be able to have the vulnerability to say those things so you can create the environment that makes it fulfilling. 'Cause here's the thing. If you're engaging in the sexual intimacy and you're distracted by the person's body odor or the something else, you're not there, right? You're not there. You can't give yourself fully because something is distracting you. So it's figuring out what are the distractions that takes away from me giving myself fully to this experience and talk about it. What can we do? But that calls for some vulnerability when it comes to, especially if it's personal, right?
Yeah,
There's going to be some real interesting conversations. All right. So Paul tells us that this is the mystery in Ephesians 5, 31 to 33. Paul says these things. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother, okay, and be united to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. One flesh. That is that fulfilling, exhilarating, complete sexual experience. This is a profound mystery, Paul says, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you also must love his father and mother. Love his father and mother. Yeah. Love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. And Paul is saying that this intimacy, he compared it to Christ's relationship with the church, and he says it's a mystery. This is what God designed for us, to have together, okay? Is something that we can't fully explain, but we can fully embrace and express to each other as best we can in the midst of our healing and our brokenness, continuing to work towards it. And it's improving and it's getting better because you are working through the things that are getting in the way of the sexual intimacy that we were designed for this. Like I said to you, God made us this way. Sin messed it up, but it doesn't mean we can't do work to make it better. But we have to come from God's perspective. We can't listen to the voices out there that tells us, we had the sexual, we had the people who, the Puritans who, then sex was bad and sex was dirty, and the whole society in the West was going that way. Then we had the sexual revolution in the 60s where they went the extreme way, would have sex however you want, do it with whoever you want, and blurred the line between, and neither of extremes are healthy. This is a God-designed part of who we are. And we got to seek the God way of fulfilling this as he designed it for us. And that means between one man and one woman in a relationship that's deeply intimate, that we are giving ourselves to each other in all our innocence and struggles. And your sexual relationship with your spouse is not compared to anybody else's sexual relationship with their spouse. Yours is unique. It's your own. How it's fulfilling for the both of you is unique to the two of you, and it's not compared to anybody else way of doing it, or talking about it, or how it should be done, when it should be done, where it should be done. You create your own unique relationship. That's what God designed for you. So because we are designed for it, we yearn for it. We shut it down and we say we don't want it anymore. We don't do it anymore because we have experienced different things that might cause that. I was listening to a priest talking about, taking the vow of chastity. And he says that that's a choice we make. We make that choice to withhold ourselves sexually and to fully focus on giving ourselves to the service of the Lord. And we know that they haven't done that perfectly. But the point I'm making is you can choose to be celibate. You can choose to not want to be sexual and make that as a commitment to Christ, and decide they want to leave that out, and that's fine. Okay, but I will tell you, you have to work through those desires and that need for intimacy and sex, and put it on the altar and say, Lord, this part of me I surrender to you, so I can fully focus on you, and make that decision. But it doesn't mean that they haven't dealt with sexual issues, or the sexual urges, and treating with people, and they talk about it, and some of them gotten in trouble for it, but some of them have talked about how they have had to deal with it and have people to help them, and get the help they need, so they can stay true to their commitment of celibacy to the Lord that they have made as they chose to live their life for Him. Okay? So I'm not saying that you can't live without sex. A lot of people do. But it needs to be a choice you made to give that up, than saying, I'll never have sex again because it's based on a bad experience you've had. So you're carrying an emotional wound that makes a decision for you, rather than making a healthy choice that I choose to not let this be a part of my life I want to focus on, because I give that up in order to focus on what God wants for me. I hope that you're tracking with me in terms of how I'm presenting this to you and saying to you that this is all God's design for us. So don't get mad at your sexuality or your urges or your sexual desires or your attraction or those things. It's learning how to live these things out in a way that they honor God. It's how I'm managing my temptation, how I'm managing my sexuality, how I'm treating my spouse, how am I honoring God? To have the fullness of the sexual experience with your spouse as honor to God, as it pleases God, is what, for some people, to even think about God and sex is an anathema. They can't even comprehend that thought. But it's God designed for us. And the best way to think about it is, how can I honor God in my sexuality? How can we honor God in our sexual relationship? Spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. To God be the glory. Let me give you some suggestions how you can improve your sexual intimacy. Okay, so here are some things I want you to think about. It starts with you. Be kind and gentle with yourself. To share yourself with someone else, you must be gentle with yourself. I was telling someone just recently, you can't dislike parts of you and like parts of you and want to help you. You have to first accept you fully for who you are. So life has been rough, or you've been through some difficulties, and you're carrying some wounds and you're working through some stuff, and sex doesn't feel good, or sex turns you off, or whatever. You have to work through this. Be gentle with yourself. Don't hate yourself. Don't, what's wrong with me and why am I like this? Once you have all these negative ways of talking about yourself, you're not going to help yourself. So you have to begin with you. Okay? Try to work with you. What's going on? Why am I this way? Why do I feel this afraid? But be gentle and get the help you need, so you can be able to know where you are at, and what you want. And sometimes, to be able to be vulnerable and to be able to say that and to pursue that, so that you can be in a better space. You're seeing your spouse struggling, wanting, desiring you, want to be with you, and you become afraid, you start shaking, you get nervous, whatever. Don't hate yourself for that. I don't know why I get this way and I hate this feeling about myself. You're not going to help yourself that way. Recognize that you're struggling, and I need to figure out, why am I struggling and how can I get the help to deal with that. So the first place you start improving your sexual intimacy is starting with yourself. Okay. The second thing is, you have to increase the amount of time you spend together. You cannot develop emotional intimacy without spending time together. You must intentionally make time for each other. Okay? You just can't do it. You just can't be passing each other and busy and whatever, and or you sit together. The popular thing now, you sit together. My wife was reading I think a comic strip she saw, or something that, or someone was telling us, how this couple was talking, and this wife was talking. She says, "Oh yes, My husband and I, we spend time together. We turn on the big screen as we both look at the small screen, in front of us, and occasionally send something to each other, hoping to get a smile from each other. That's what we do today. That's how we spend time together. Okay. We are on the screen, but you got to make time to be intimate, to talk about the things, to be vulnerable, to share your heart, to share what's going on, to have those conversations so that you can be able to feel the closeness. The physical sexual experience is the culmination of what you've been working on in the closeness of the relationship, spending the time together. There's no way you can develop the intimacy necessary in the marriage if you don't spend time together. Okay. Number 3, empathy. And Brene Brown again tells us connecting with people so we know we are not alone when we are in the struggle. Empathy is a way to connect to the emotions another person is experiencing. It doesn't require that you have to experience the same situation they're going through, but your spouse is telling you about um, why sex is so difficult because and they're crying and they said because and you're holding them and they're telling you because this happened and you are just feeling yes the pain, knowing this is difficult, and that's all you need to be there for. Okay, that's what empathy means. I not say I understand. No, you don't. But you'd say I feel your pain. I know this is very painful for you, and but I'm here for you. We're going to work through this together. That's empathy. Rather than you hear it and you can't handle it, and you think, well, I don't see why that's a big deal. Why are you making this a big deal? But the empathy says, I feel the pain. I'm here for you. I love you. We'll work through this. Okay? So we must have empathy. We must be good listeners. Listening is not the same as hearing. Listening calls for our undivided attention. We are listening when we are trying to understand rather than to be understood. When listening, ask questions for clarification and give feedback on what you're hearing. So they're not asking for a judgment. Just let them feel heard. Ask the questions. Be there for them. Turn off the phone. Don't put the phone in silence when it vibrates. It breaks your focus and your concentration. Leave it in the other room, whatever, and have these good times of listening to each other and being able to build the intimacy. Okay. Assume the best about each other. This is often a difficult one, especially if you have been hurt in the past, either by your spouse or someone close to you that you trust. When we are hurt, or we don't heal from our hurt, we start with judgment. We don't trust people. Okay. But when we heal, we trust people, but we are careful. We have boundaries and we're very aware of what we're doing and what we want to do. So assume the best. Don't always think that people are trying to get you or they're going to hurt you or they don't like you. But you need to take responsibility for setting the boundaries so that you protect yourself. Show compassion, not judgment. We naturally go to the judgment. It's our default. I think I said this last week. Our brain has a natural tendency to, like Velcro, to stick to the negative. Okay? That's where we go naturally. It takes conscious choice to offer grace. Okay? Judgment is an amygdala hijack, like I said last week, when we're given a total emotional response. While compassion is when we are thinking, processing, and making judgment calls. Healthy calls on how we respond to people. The worst place to live is in your head. At the same time, God shows up in people. It's on, you're praying about a situation, you're asking God to help you, but you're not sharing the need, you're not sharing the struggle. And it's when you share the struggle, God has people right there who is able to help you through that need. So it is important to know that you are not in this just the two of you. People have been getting married for hundreds of years, thousands of years. So there is help out there, people around you that could help you. But again, you have to have the right people around you. You just don't go to TikTok and you just don't go to X and you go to those social media for answers. Those people who post all these things about marriage and this and that and the other. That's not where you get your answers. Find the people who are invested in you, who their values are the same, and they can help you because they might be have been married 20 years, you've been married 2 years. They can tell you, one of the beautiful souls that we have on this platform whose words, and she was on last week, whose words are always so powerful, the Sister Pearl, who could bring 60 something years of being married to help you who've been married 5, 10, 20 years. So that we need to know we can help each other, but there are people out there who would help us as well. So in closing, I just want to say a couple things here to you. Marital intimacy means both you and your partner feel safe, right? And comfortable with this type of uninhibited expression around each other. There are some people who've been married for years and they haven't seen each other naked. Okay? That means the space is not safe. For whatever reason, okay, the safe space is cultivated by each person refraining from judgment or contempt when the other is sharing. Whether you're sharing yourself physically or you're sharing yourself verbally or you're sharing yourself emotionally, can you create a safe space? And sometimes we make the space unsafe because of our own issues, not our spouse. And we have to work with that. And sometimes our spouse makes the space unsafe because of their own issues. But the point I'm making is because you are in this relationship, the two are the most important human relationship that you have on earth, then it is a priority to create a safe space. You want your spouse to feel safe in your presence. How many couple I've spoken to or spoken to one spouse who says, I can't tell my wife this or I can't tell my husband that because I'm afraid of this and I'm afraid of it. I'm thinking, that's not a safe space. So then they tell somebody else who make them feel heard, valued, understood, and the emotion starts growing with that person and the walls start going up with the spouse. That is what we're trying to guard against. So the work is to create a safe space. Your sex life can have a big impact on the rest of your marriage. Emotional intimacy grows as you and your partner shares these physical moments. This can build a strong bond of trust between the two of you and may even strengthen monogamy. I mean, that is, it's from our head. Not may, but I know it will. We know it intellectually, but we struggle with it because we lack the intimacy that we're talking about here. And we go and find it elsewhere. And so then we can't maintain the monogamy. So it is important for us to work on building the sexual intimacy. So in the final thing here, it is sexual intimacy in marriage is important no matter how long you have been together. Your sex life strengthens your emotional connection, heightens your trust in others, in each other, and regular healthy sex can also improve your communication and your many healthy habits. It's good for you. It keeps you healthy. It is a good thing. God created it for us to do. But because of the brokenness of what we're living in, it has become corrupted and misunderstood and put in a very negative light. But if we look at it from God's work and God's design for us, it's a very sexual intimacy is God's purpose designed for us to fully enjoy the way he designed it for us. A man and a woman leaving their father and mother, cleaving together, becoming one flesh. That's God's design. Okay? All right. Let me just give you some assignment things to do. Okay? Conversation with your spouse. Depends on where you're in a relationship, how you can talk about it. Just take it where it's at. Don't try to go to the extreme. Look at the relationship where it's at and say, what can I do? Okay. What excites you about the sexual intimacy with your spouse and why? Okay. Both of you can have that conversation, share it, and it might take you a while to get there because you can't have that conversation now. That's fine. Write down your thoughts, wrestle with it, whatever, but try to see if it's possible to even broach that question in a small way with just one thing, okay? and not the excitement. The other side now, the fears. What are the fears and concerns do you have about sexual intimacy with your spouse and why? Okay, again, it might be something, whatever it is, but you being able to think about it. So I'm asking you to think about things in a way that you probably haven't thought about it. What's the excitement? What's the fear? And if we can talk about it together, is what I would like for you all to be able to do. But even if you're not there at this moment, if you can even begin processing those questions on your own, what excites me about the sex that I have with my spouse? What are some of the fears and concerns I have with the sex I have with my spouse? And begin to kind of see where that is with you. So I think you might get to the place where you could say, yeah, I could probably articulate this to my spouse. The vulnerability, that's what we're talking about. And number three, how can your spouse support you in dealing with your fears and concerns? How can your spouse add more excitement? So not only what are the things, but you have to be able to say what will make it different. You have to tell them. Okay, you just can't say, well, I don't like this or this. I have this concern, but then what's going to alleviate the fear? What's going to attend to the concern? You have to be able to identify what it is and what you need in order for it to go away. Okay, so that's important, and you need to be able to share that with each other as well. Okay, and finally, at the end of time by praying together for each other. For some of you, the time might end with you having sex because this conversation led to some clarity and some excitement, and that's all well and good because even in the sex, you're bringing praise and honor and glory to God. So it may end, the assignment may end in that. So however you find it, but I wanted to really just encourage you to open up the space of intimacy and places where you probably see things that have kept you from being more involved in the sex, more expressive, more enjoying it, all of that. Talk about it, and then be able to help each other and share it together. Okay. All right, Anike. Well, thank you all for the opportunity again to share and to just encourage you to, as a couple, just deepen the sexual intimacy by doing some of the things I suggested to you. Next week, we're going to talk about how to fight, not to win, but to grow. Okay? Thank you.